Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome, friends, one and all. Welcome this afternoon to the MirYam Institute online debate. This episode of the debate series is undertaken in proud association with the Allgemeine and with JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service. The Allgemeine is the leading Jewish media voice outside of Israel. It is a major international online news destination that serves as a strong, independent voice of truth on behalf of the Jewish people and Israel. It is read by millions each month and is exceptionally influential. Its stories are regularly quoted by leading publications, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, USA Today, Newsweek, Le Monde, the Washington Post, and others. We want to encourage you to take the time to follow the Allgemeine on Facebook or Twitter today, or to sign up to their informative daily e-paper. And you can visit their website at www.allgemeine.com. JBS, or the Jewish Broadcasting Service, is America's national Jewish television channel seen on cable systems, on Roku, and online throughout the United States and worldwide. A Jewish non-profit entity, JBS programming is similar to a Jewish-themed PBS channel, with a major emphasis placed on news and information, especially regarding the State of Israel, through which viewers have the opportunity to hear Israelis speak in their own voice. JBS is recognized as the leading forum for news and information in the Jewish community. We want to encourage you to visit their website and to follow their vital work at www.jbstv.org. Now, with that having been said, on behalf of my colleague Rosita Panini and I, and on behalf of my great and powerful colleague Alan Langer, our international coordinator, we're delighted to move on with today's debate. The motion for which is entitled, Israel must apply sovereignty over the Jordan Valley immediately. As such, this debate focuses upon an issue of national security significance and strategic importance to the State of Israel, namely the determination and character of Israel's eastern border. The subject of Israel's fate has been one of consistent focus across successive Israeli governments when it comes to the Jordan Valley. Israel's former Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin once stated that security control over the Jordan in the broadest sense would have to be maintained. But as consistent as Israel's attachment to the Jordan Valley as a security imperative has been, Israel's inaction when enshrining that matter into law has equaled it. Relevance and urgency were injected into the subject by the Trump peace proposal, which among other things states that Israel can maintain sovereignty over the Jordan Valley. Prime Minister Netanyahu made the application of sovereignty over the Jordan one of his campaign pledges during Israel's last round of elections, and both he and his then opposition number, now alternate Prime Minister Benny Gantz, were hosted for separate meetings at the White House, alleged to have focused upon the aspect of Israeli sovereignty in the Jordan Valley this past March. Prime Minister Netanyahu has pledged to begin the process of extending Israeli sovereignty as early as July 1st, 2020. And as with all things Israel-related, there are questions and considerations on both sides of the proposed application of sovereignty that merit consideration and discussion. American legislators on either side of the aisle in the House of Representatives and the Senate have weighed in to support or to caution Israel's moves, such as they may be towards sovereignty, along partisan lines. The UAE, a country with which Israel is increasing and bettering its ties, conveyed a separate message expressing that the progress Israel currently enjoys with that country and others in the region could be damaged by an Israeli move towards sovereignty over the Jordan. The Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan has threatened that a major conflict may ensue if Israel applies sovereignty. And Hamas and the Palestinian Authority are warning of increased violence, a possible third intifada, and in the case of the Palestinian Authority, the end of security cooperation between them and the State of Israel. Additionally, there are many who believe that the application of sovereignty by Israel distracts from what they view as the real topic of significance, an ever more belligerent and troublesome Iran. These voices suggest that, among other things, all of Israel's political capital with the United States must be focused exclusively on the issue of Iran, and that sovereignty over the Jordan detracts and distracts from that. Supporters of the application of sovereignty readily point to Israel's status as a sovereign nation, one that has the right to affix its own future. They note a weakened Palestinian Authority and the lack of a Palestinian uprising and reaction to the US recognition of Jerusalem under the current administration. And they tout the improving ties regionally that Israel enjoys, and indeed globally, as reason not to fear progressing with this initiative. And there's more, and there's much more on either side. But suffice it to say that this discussion renders the subject more than ripe for debate. Now, in support of the motion, we have Brigadier General Yossi Kupavasser. Brigadier General Kupavasser, a retired senior officer of the Israel Defense Forces, was formerly the Director General of the Ministry of International Affairs and Strategy in the State of Israel. During his extensive career in the IDF, he served as Assistant Defense Attaché for Intelligence at the Israeli Embassy in Washington, D.C. from 1992 to 1994, and an intelligence officer of the IDF Central Command from 1998 to 2001, and as the head of the Analysis and Production Division of the IDF Directorate of Military Intelligence from 2001 to 2006. He played a significant role in determining Israel's response to terror, as well as regional developments and the sharing of intelligence analyses with the US and other foreign entities. Yossi Kupavasser has authored a wide variety of publications on the Middle East, on terrorism and intelligence, and he is an opinion contributor to various Israeli and international papers and other media outlets. Brigadier General Kupavasser was the Andrei and Charles Bronfman Visiting Fellow at the Saban Center for Middle East Policy at the Brookings Institution from 2006 to 2007. Following his retirement, he served as VP of Global CST, a security consultancy firm. Brigadier General Kupavasser holds a BA in Arabic language and literature from Haifa University and an MA in economics from Tel Aviv University. In opposition to the motion is Professor Chuck Freilich. Professor Chuck Freilich is a former Deputy National Security Advisor in Israel and a longtime senior fellow at Harvard's Belfer Center. He teaches political science at Columbia University, NYU, and Tel Aviv University. He's the author of Zion's Dilemmas, How Israel Makes National Security Policy, Israeli National Security, a New Strategy for an Era of Change, and Israel and the Cyber Threat, How the Startup Nation Became a Global Cyber Power. He's published numerous academic articles and over 150 op-eds, and appears frequently on US, Israeli, and international TV and radio stations. Now, friends, you as our audience members will soon be asked to cast an advance, anonymous, live vote. At the end of the debate, you will be asked to cast your vote once again, having heard the argumentations. Whomever of our debaters moves the needle the most will be declared our winner. The debate will conclude at 1:20 p.m. New York time, and the result will be announced. I ask that you please only cast your advance vote if you intend to remain on the line in order to cast your second vote at the end of the debate. Before I move on toward an advance vote and for Brigadier General Kupavasser to begin, I want to add a guiding principle by which we at the MirYam Institute hope you will be escorted throughout this debate. Our goal is not to gauge the opinions of our audience on the subject matter at hand. Our goal is to gauge which of the two arguments our audience believes to be more intellectually honest and of greatest merit. It's a very important distinction. And so we ask you, therefore, please vote based on which of our esteemed debaters presents the more compelling argumentation and position, based upon which argument stands at best under scrutiny, and which is the more reasonable and logical position as you perceive it once the debate concludes. I'd like to ask my colleague, Thomas, to please come online and instruct everybody how they can cast their advance vote.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much, Benjamin. If everyone could please go to menti.com on your phone or computer. That is MENTI.com, and then you'll be prompted to enter a code, and enter the code that's above on top of the screen, 476579. Once you've entered that code, you should then be able to answer the question of whether Israel must apply sovereignty over the Jordan Valley. Once again, go to menti.com, MENTI.com, and then use the code.
And we'll take just a few moments to allow everybody to posit their votes. Thank you for that, Thomas.
And if anyone's having any issues, it's menti.com, and then the code is up there on the top, 476579.
We'll give just another few minutes. I see the votes are coming in.
All right, and it looks like we've kind of settled in here with with commend the motion in front of oppose the motion, and 5 have abstained.
So Thomas, do you want to lock that on, or do you want to give until another 2 minutes for anyone else to vote if they wish to?
Yeah, I can do that, and I will hide the results for now.
Okay, so we're going to give until 12:19. That's another 2 minutes. Thank you everyone for your patience. Just for everybody to lock in their vote. Thomas, could you read the instructions just one more time, please?
Yes, so if anyone would like to vote one last time, you'll just use your phone or computer, and you'll go to menti.com, MENTI.com, and use the code 476579, and you'll be prompted to vote on the question on whether Israel must apply sovereignty over the Jordan Valley, and the options are oppose the motion, commend, and abstain. Right now, commend is out front in front of oppose, and then 5 have abstained.
And Alan, just before I begin with Brigadier General Kupavasa, could you please explain to everybody how they can ask a question live during the course of the debate?
Absolutely. So for people that have called in via their cell phones, unfortunately, the only way to submit a question was before the debate. But for people that are using their computers and are watching the debate, there is a button at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. All you would have to do is click on that, and it's very simple. You will type your question in. Once you submit that, it'll be entered into a queue, and the debaters will get to your question. Thank you very much.
And Benjamin, it would appear that we have 57% who are commending the motion, 30% opposing it, and 14% abstaining as of right now.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And with that, I would like to say, Brigadier General Kopavasa, welcome to the MirYam Institute. You're invited to brief our audience, and you have 10 minutes to set out your stall in favor of the motion, Israel must apply sovereignty over the Jordan Valley now. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Brigadier General Kopavasa.
Thank you, Benjamin, and thank you, the MirYam Project, for having me. And I'll make the case very simple. I think that Israel has two goals that it wants to achieve. One is security, and the second is peace. And they, of course, go along with each other. And applying Israel's sovereignty over the Jordan Valley and over the roads that lead to the Jordan Valley, otherwise we cannot reach the Jordan Valley, unfortunately, is necessary for both achieving peace and achieving security for Israel. Why is it important for achieving security? I think it's relatively easy to understand, and you mentioned what the rabbin had to say about it, but it's beyond what meets the eye in that respect. It is obvious that Israel has to stay in the Jordan Valley in order to protect itself from any kind of threats that may emerge from the east. And this is why Rabin said that it's going to be our security border forever. And even though right now we have good relations with Jordan and it seems calm on the other side of the border, it's the Middle East. Nobody knows what's going to happen in a couple of years, and we have to be prepared. But beyond of that, this security aspect of the need to have sovereignty over the Jordan Valley is also coming from the fact that if we are not there, then Jordan and the Palestinian state, or whatever entity is going to be there, are going to be adjacent to each other. And this is going to be extremely dangerous for us and for Jordan as well. And the reason why it's going to be dangerous for us is very simple. The Palestinian narrative, which is the main reason why we can't make peace with the Palestinians, and I'm coming to peace in a minute, the Palestinian narrative is based on the idea, as it was stated in the phases theory in the 10th meeting of the 10 points paper that the Palestinian National Conference adopted back in 1974, article number 8 says that once the Palestinians will have a state of their own, they will call on their Arab brothers to help them in completing the ultimate goal of the Palestinians, which is bringing down Zionism. And we know what happened in Gaza. Very simple. Once they had a place controlled by them with a border with an Arab state, they immediately used it in order to arm themselves to the teeth and used the arms in order to threaten us and to hit us as far as they could. So we don't want a Palestinian entity in Judea and Samaria, in the West Bank, to become such a threat to Israel, especially as they are much closer to the heart of Israel from there, and they can threaten Ben Gurion Airport and Tel Aviv and whatever. So we may have to make sure that it's not going to be possible for the Palestinians to do whatever they want from Jordan, bringing people and weapons to the Palestinian entity, to the Palestinian state, if it's going to be, and threaten Israel's survival. That's why we have to be able to stay there and to control the Jordan Valley by ourselves. Now, there are all kinds of opinions and ideas that say, well, you can rely on somebody else. Let's have the NATO forces, let's have American forces deployed in the Jordan Valley. We have our experience with these international forces, and we don't expect anybody to put their life in risks for our sake. And the principle upon which our security is based is that Israel should be able to defend itself by itself, and that's why we need to be in the Jordan Valley. And beyond of that, as I said, it's also the security of Jordan depends on that. And the Jordanians know that if the Palestinians are going to be adjacent to them and border them, they will have all kinds of intentions to change the situation in Jordan. They did that back in the 60s and 70s, and they would be in danger. And especially since we have a majority of Palestinians in Jordan, this is going to be very dangerous to the stability of Jordan. So even though the Jordanians say we are against unilateral annexation, as they call it, not application of the law, but even though they are against it, publicly, beyond the closed doors, they would say, never, and I can tell you from my own experience that that's what I heard from them many times, never bring the Palestinians close to us. We have to have you in between us and the Palestinians. Now, that's the security aspect of all of that. And you have to remember, coming back to the topographic issue, that there is no other natural border that can be defensible for Israel besides the Jordan Valley. The Jordan Valley is a very natural defense line from, it's a slope of the slopes on the west side are about 1,000 meters within just a couple of kilometers. It's excellent for observation, it's excellent for defense, and there are only very few roads through which you can come out from the valley towards Jerusalem and the rest of Israel. So this is a natural defense line. So this is one reason why we should stay there forever. But the other reason we should move forward with the application of the law and the sovereignty of Israel in this area is that this is the only way to move the peace process forward. I mean, all the efforts to bring peace between us and the Palestinians failed miserably in the last 100 years. The reason they failed was that the Palestinians believed that Israel doesn't have the right to exist and shouldn't be recognized as the nation state of the Jewish people, and that they should be able, in any agreement, to continue fighting and struggling against Zionism because their identity is based on a narrative that explains that there is no such thing as a Jewish people, that there is no historical relations between the Jewish people, no sovereignty of Jewish people in the past in this piece of land. And because of that, the Palestinians should struggle against Zionism until it disappears. You know, Abu Mazen himself has a book, a very famous book that was not translated, by the way, to English or to Hebrew, called Zionism from Beginning to End. And he explains there how the Palestinians, together with the Arabs, together with some of the Jews, will bring about the fall of the Zionism eventually, and why Zionism is an invention of colonialism and so on and so forth. So there's no way to reach peace with the Palestinians on any issue, and that's why it failed altogether, as long as the Palestinians stick to this narrative. Now, when we talk about application of the law in the Jordan Valley, we say that we are going to make it not totally unilaterally. We're not doing a unilateral step. We do it in coordination with the American administration, with the United States of America, based on a peace plan that guarantees that there is going to be peace based on realities and a different narrative of the Palestinians. According to this peace, the Palestinians will have to accept that Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. According to this peace, the Palestinians will have to stop paying salaries to terrorists as they used to do today. According to this peace, the Palestinians will have to respect that Israel has severe and justified security concerns, and because of that, this peace is going to be based on the ability of Israel to defend itself by itself, unlike many previous peace plans that were presented to us before. That is the context in which we are going to apply this sovereignty. And this is going to deprive the Palestinians from the most important asset with which they blocked any progress towards peace until now. And this is the Palestinian veto over peace process, over the progress in the peace process. Until now, whenever the Palestinians didn't like anything, and especially they didn't like to accept Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people, they said no, and nothing moved. In most cases, because nothing moved, people tried to give them something more. Like after the Kerry-Obama peace plan that failed because the Palestinians refused to accept it, because it referred to Israel as a nation state of the Jewish people, what the Obama administration did was to adopt the 2334 resolution in the United Nations Security Council, and by that moved even farther towards the Palestinians, who are still refusing to accept the idea that Israel is a nation state of the Jewish people. Here, for the first time, there is a message to the Palestinians. Your intransigence is going to cost you. There is a move forward. Things are going to improve for Israel's security and for peace, even without your consent. So think twice. We have 4 years according to this plan. If you can come to the table right now, we hope if they come to the table right now, we wouldn't move at all. But if you don't come to the table now, still you have 4 years to move and come to the table. And Israel, under this program, under this plan, is going to keep this 70% of the territory of the West Bank for you and not do anything about it, at least for 4 years, at least regarding the half of the Area C that is determined to be designated to be a part of the Palestinian state. Moreover, according to this plan, when we are moving forward, we are ready to negotiate based on this plan, which means that we are ready to negotiate the establishment of the Palestinian state. This is something that is very important for the Palestinians. So for the first time, we are moving towards a peace plan that is realistic, that takes into consideration Israel's worries about its security, and takes also into consideration the expectations that can be accepted of the Palestinians. Last word before I finish, we do not underestimate the threats. We realize there are threats that are going to go with the application of the law. We know that there's going to be some reaction by the Palestinians, including violent. We know that Jordan doesn't like it. We know that some Europeans don't like it. We even know that some Americans don't like it. But this is so important for our ability to move away from this situation where we cannot move forward on both security and peace, that is worthwhile the risks taken. Thank you very much. I think it's exactly 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Brigadier General Kupperwasser. We appreciate you outlining your position. And I also want to pay a special thanks to the organization that you're representing today, Habithonistim. We commend their important work. And I'm delighted to ask to set out his stall, Professor Chuck Freilich, who not only is the author of this book that I am currently wading my way through and that I commend to everybody to read, the one that I mentioned during the introduction, Israeli National Security, a new strategy for an era of change, but also is a member of Commanders for Israeli Security, which is, if you like, a counter voice to the position of Habithonistim. So this adds another layer to the debate. And with that, Professor Freilich, you have 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Well, first of all, good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. Thank you to Benjamin and the MirYam Institute for hosting this, and thanks to my colleague and friend, Brigadier General Kupperwasser, for participating in this alongside with me. We've known each other for only about 40 years. This isn't the first time that we've disagreed, and it may not be the last. I'm willing to bet on that. First of all, let me start off by saying that there is a truly remarkable thing, which is that we are now 2 days away from the target date for unilateral annexation. All international law experts believe that there is no difference between application of sovereignty and unilateral unilateral annexation and application of sovereignty. Application of sovereignty is merely a term that is used to try and hide or make more palatable what is under discussion. And the issue isn't necessarily unilateral annexation of the Jordan Valley, because frankly, remarkably, 2 days ahead of the target date, no one in the state of Israel, to the best of my knowledge, the prime minister as well, has any idea what's actually going to happen. Is this going to be what people talked about in the beginning, unilateral annexation of the entire West Bank? Well, no, probably. Then people thought it might be the 30% that the Trump plan provides Israel. No. Then people were saying, well, maybe Jordan Valley and the settlement blocks. Maybe it's just the settlement blocks. The truth is, we have no idea what is going to happen. And I think that one thing that General Kupperwasser, or Cooper as everybody knows him, and I will use that nickname for the rest of the talk, I think Cooper will agree with me that this is not the way to conduct national security decision-making. I at least believe that it is simply an outrage. Now, the problem isn't the question of annexation. We all know that a few percent of the West Bank will be incorporated in Israel in any final agreement. The Palestinians know that. The problem is doing it unilaterally. And the problem is that, that annexation is part of a decades-long process of creeping annexation. And it started with 1 or 2 settlements decades ago. Today, we're talking about incorporating entire parts of the West Bank. And this may end with, in the end, with full annexation. And that is the right wing's end game. It's not just about the Jordan Valley or about the settlement blocks. It's about actually annexing the entire territory. And that has severe ramifications for Israel's national security. The truth is that there are really 2 possibilities at the moment. One is that there will be a major annexation, something like the Jordan Valley. And if that happens, I couldn't disagree with Cooper more. This is exactly not conducive to the peace process, just the opposite. This is probably the demise of the two-state solution, the final nail in the coffin. As it is, it may not be far from that. The end of a two-state solution leads to a binational state, the end of the Zionist dream of a Jewish and democratic Israel. And by the way, we know what binational states look like in the Middle East. They're called Syria and Iraq. I don't think that's where we want to go. The other possibility is we're talking about some very limited and symbolic move. And then I have to ask, why? What do we need it for? We're in control of the territory in any event. The world wasn't really contesting it. Attention had moved away from the Palestinian issue. And we just shot ourselves in the foot. We refocused world attention back on ourselves. Now, it is certainly possible that the international reaction will be muted, something like after the Jerusalem recognition of the Golan Heights. It's possible, but the state of Israel is not a game of roulette. This isn't a casino where you just throw out a strategic move and wait to see what happens, because the truth is that the probable response will be severe. The only question is how severe. And wise people don't put themselves in a situation where the question is how severe. The Palestinian Authority has already announced an end to security cooperation. Security cooperation with them has been critical to combating terrorism over the years. The IDF assessment is that there will be a significant increase in violence in the West Bank and that there will be a clash with Hamas. Now, if there is significant violence, then in the West Bank, the IDF will have to go in. Chaos, more violence, maybe the PA collapses or even decides to dismantle itself, maybe just more terrorism. Maybe we have to retake even more territory. Even a limited move, not even the Jordan Valley, much less, can set in motion a snowball effect which ends up leading to annexation of the entire area. And as I said before, that's actually the right wing's endgame here. Even if this doesn't happen, we are talking another major step in the creeping annexation and in the demise of the two-state solution. Now, Hamas has said that it will respond. It's going to have a hard time not doing so. If we have a major uptick of violence in the West Bank and in Gaza, then Hezbollah and Iran will have a hard time staying out. I don't think they want to get in, but it's going to be very hard for them to stay out. Relations with Egypt and Jordan will at best suffer. Now, it's possible that they won't be forced to abrogate the peace treaties. They don't want to. Maybe they won't have to. But there's no doubt that there's going to be a serious price to be paid. The really remarkable security cooperation that has evolved with them in recent years will be, at best, significantly damaged. The historic breakthrough with the Gulf states, with the Saudis, UAE, and others, again, at best, set back, even though we have a common interest in fighting Iran. Why? The international response, well, there are going to be sanctions from the Europeans. The only question is how bad and from how many countries. A further erosion of Israel's international legitimacy. Actually, we don't really have full support of the Trump administration. The Trump administration has cooled to it. They're having some second thoughts. They're putting the brakes on it. Now, there's a very good chance that Mr. Biden will be elected in November. I don't know how aware people are. There has been a precipitous decline, almost a free-for-all in support for Israel among the Democratic camp. Now, I don't care Republican, Democratic. I want bipartisan support for the state of Israel. The fury on the Democratic side is extreme. They're just waiting for the opportunity to pay Israel back for the perceived misdeeds, correct or not. That is the perception of the Democratic wing. I think Mr. Biden will block the extreme tendencies that are there. But there's going to be a price, a significant price to be paid. First of all, he will probably undo recognition. Second of all, every Democratic administration has tried to launch a peace process. I'm sure he will as well. We will do so from a much worse position from our point of view if we go ahead with annexation. There's going to be heavy pressure to cut foreign aid in any event because of anger towards Israel and for reasons that have nothing to do with Israel. The American economic crisis. We are playing around, we are screwing around with a fundamental existential pillar of Israel's national security, and that is the relationship with the United States. So then let me ask, does anybody gain from this? Is there any strategic advantage? And the answer is yes, to Iran and Hezbollah, because it diverts attention from them, from their misdeeds, from the Iranian nuclear issue, from Iranian expansionism, from the buildup of the Hezbollah rocket capability, from the economic crisis in Lebanon. We are refocusing attention on ourselves, strengthening their position. One of the reasons for doing this was a belief that there was a unique opportunity while President Trump is in office, when we know he's in office for the next few months. Well, he may not be there for long, as I said. I don't think that the timing could actually be much worse. Not just because it's increasingly looking like Mr. Trump will not be there, but because Israel is dealing with an unprecedented economic crisis. Unlike anything in our history, Corona is surging. Unemployment is horrific. This is the last thing we need. At best, the increased military costs are going to be in the billions. At best, the cost to Israel's international standing, which will translate into our international trade, will be in our billions, in the billions. Now, Cooper said, and I couldn't agree more, we have not been able to reach the classic two-state paradigm. The gaps between the two sides have been unbridgeable to date.
Professor Freilich, this must
one
be
more
your
thing.
last
One more
sentence.
thing.
Thank you.
The fact, it says I'm muted. Do I have one more sentence just to conclude that thought?
Yes, you do.
Okay. The fact that something hasn't succeeded doesn't mean you abandon it. What we should be doing is preserving the circumstances for a two-state solution, if and when the circumstances evolve in the future, not doing the opposite, which is annexation.
Thank you so very much, and thank you to both of you for being so disciplined with your time and your timing. For the next 20 minutes approximately, I'm going to pose some questions for you to back and forth about. And the first question that I really want to delve into is, I want a defining description, please, of what applying sovereignty over the Jordan Valley actually means in your understanding. You've used various descriptions of that, but I think that a lot of people are confused about the issue. Some think that it's applying sovereignty over all of the area of Judea and Samaria, others over various parts of the Jordan Valley, others over the entirety of the Jordan Valley, and others over large communities in Judea and Samaria. And I'd like to just straighten the line on where each of you are coming from. And I'll begin, please, with you, Yossi, if I can, or Cooper, if I may call you that. Just give your definition, and I'll come to you, Chuck, and then we'll get into a bit of a discussion about it.
So, since we do it in the context of a plan, of the peace plan of the American administration, the plan is very clear on that. It's 30% of the area, of the total area of the Judea and Samaria, which is 50% of the sea areas, can be put under Israeli sovereignty, and including the Jordan Valley. And there is a conceptual map that says what are the territories that can be put under Israeli sovereignty. There is the committee that start trying to delineate the territory that's exactly 30% according to the needs, to put all the settlements in it, and to put as much as we can from the Jordan Valley, because we need the Jordan Valley in the widest terms, as Rabin said. And this is something that has to work out in detail. Whether we are going to do all of that in one move or not, it's not clear, because as Chuck said correctly, it's still in the making, and July 1st is just the first day in which we can do something, but according to the coalition agreement. But it doesn't mean that this is the day we have to do something. So we can wait a little bit until this committee finalizes its activities, and until there is agreement inside Israel. What is keeping us from announcing what we are going to do is that there is disagreement inside the government, and Gantz and Ashkenazi have their own opinions, and so they can't have a veto power over what Netanyahu is going to do according to the coalition agreement. But of course, it's very important that we move with And here, let me say one word about what, I mean, I have a lot of reservations about what Chuck said, but I want to say one thing. This is not the extreme right plan. This is a plan supported by the vast majority of Israel. It's, if it's going to be brought to the Knesset, it's going to have something like at least 80 votes, especially if the blue and white is going to be on board and there's going to be agreement. And that's why Netanyahu is working very hard in order to gain their agreement and may change all kinds of details in the plan of exactly how it's going to be implemented in order to gain their support. And, but the extreme right is not in the government. The extreme right is not even in the Knesset. So it's, we have to realize what the majority of Israelis want is to have this application of the law and sovereignty, because this is going to not only take care of our sovereign security and create a chance for peace. And let me just say in this respect, there's no point in trying again and again doing the same thing that doesn't work. It doesn't work because there's a Palestinian intransigence. They don't want to accept Israel as a nation state of the Jewish people. This is why it doesn't work. Let's go to something else.
Thank you very much.
The
now let me
majority
take
of the Israelis supporting it is going to succeed.
Chuck, if I can. Thank you, Cooper. And Chuck, first, give your description of what you envisage by way of the application of sovereignty, and defend yourself against Cooper's rebuttal that this is not actually part of the right-wing long-term goal, but in fact is indicative of the majority of Israelis. And just for the clarification of our listeners, of course, Cooper was referring to disagreements in the Israeli cabinet. What a surprise. Not the first time in history that we've had that. And you made mention of Gantz, who's now, of course, the Minister of Defense, and Ashkenazi, who's the foreign minister at this time. So just so everybody knows at what level these disagreements exist. Chuck, the floor is yours to respond, if you would.
Okay, first of all, let me say again, I'm not talking about annexation of the Jordan Valley, because I don't think that's the issue. And had I known that that was how the question was going to be phrased today, I would have objected to that. And I'll state again, the idea of applying sovereignty is simply a way for trying to misportray what is unilateral annexation. Now, since that's the position, I want to make my position, I want to make another couple of points. First of all, it's not that this is the position of the vast majority of the people of Israel. This is something which is being driven by the hard right, because it's a step towards complete annexation. Some people, by the way, don't support it because they're afraid that it means accepting the Trump plan, and then maybe that does lead to two states. Who would have thought that actually some of Mr. Netanyahu's biggest opponents here would be from the hard right? But this is being driven by the hard right. The vast majority of the people of Israel do not support annexation. And as a matter of fact, the polls show quite clearly that they don't. And a really remarkable poll that came out in the last few days shows that actually only 4% of the public thinks that this is a big priority. This is an issue which is being driven by domestic politics, both in Israel and the United States, more than by substance. Mr. Trump believed that this was a way to gain the support of the evangelical base. I think recent polls have showed that that's probably not the case, and that may be why his support seems to have cooled for it. And it was being driven by Mr. Netanyahu as part of his ongoing political / judicial battle to keep himself out of jail. And he's in serious danger. My heart goes out to him. He is in serious danger of finding himself in jail in the next couple of years. And the idea was annexation versus for exoneration. He was trying to bring the hard right on board, and not just the hard right, the entire right. I will give you annexation. You support me in the judicial battle for exoneration. Now, one more point that's important to make. I agree with Cooper. The Jordan Valley is important for security reasons. Yeah, you can debate how important it is today after the changing nature of warfare, but it's important. Israel has to retain security control of the Jordan Valley in some way. No doubt about that in a final settlement. You don't have to apply sovereignty or annex to have security control.
Thank you very much, Chuck. So I want to move on now to another point that came out in the two arguments that each of you put forward, and that's the notion of unilateralism. Now, this is very important because, as an example of that, there's a letter being circulated that's gathering signatures among the House Democrats. It's got 191 members who are signatories to it at the moment, and the issue that they seem to be railing against, so they're not condemning any move, they're adding notes of caution, is unilateral annexation. It's referred to no less than 5 times in a single-sided letter. And to give you one example of that, it says, "We write today to express our deep concern that the push for unilateral annexation of territory in the West Bank after July 1st will make these goals, those goals being the two-state solution, harder to achieve. Unilateral actions taken by either side will push the parties further from negotiations and the possibility of a final negotiated agreement." Now, Chuck, you said that this is a unilateral move. Cooper said that it's not a unilateral move, that this is a move that is taken in coordination with the United States. Underscore your point, if you would, in the context of the political wins in the United States of America as a strategic aspect of Israel's policymaking.
How do you define the word unilateral? Well, okay, maybe it's coordinated with the United States, but there are another couple of hundred states out there, right, in the world. And certainly the region, our neighbors, do not look favorably upon this. And I state again that the Trump administration has had its own concerns and seems to be cooling to the idea. The point is, yes, I say again, we all know that part of the West Bank will be annexed in a final settlement. And it's as part of a negotiated final settlement, that's fine. When we do this unilaterally, when it is part of a multi-decade process of creeping annexation. Now, if it's just a matter of security, there are ways of addressing security. This is part of a creeping annexation of the West Bank. Now, I know that Cooper and I both agree that we both want a predominantly Jewish and a vibrantly democratic Israel. Okay? I don't think there's any disagreement on that. This is something which risks that. Okay, maybe some people don't think the risk is high. There is a risk here. We are annexing more and more of the territory. To reach a two-state solution is almost impossible for all the reasons that Cooper correctly said. The Palestinians have rejected everything. We have to do whatever we can to keep the option alive because, well, I have to tell you, after 52 years, 53 years, I haven't heard of any other viable solution. If somebody that maintains Israel's Jewish and democratic character and meets some Palestinian minimum. If somebody offers it to me, fine. You know, I didn't marry the two-state solution. There is no other alternative. Anyone realistic knows that. We have to keep it alive. We have to preserve our character as a Jewish and democratic state.
Cooper, come back on that. Explain why this is not a unilateral move in your mind, and 3 points. Why is it not unilateral? Why is it worth the risk that Chuck is sounding the alarm over? And how does this play into Israel's relationship with the United States as a strategic aspect of its policymaking? In brief, if you would.
First, it's not unilateral because we are not going to do anything that is not accepted by the United States. All the idea came as a result of the peace plan that was presented by the United States. We wouldn't do it. We haven't done it in 53 years because there was no American support and there was no context to doing it. It's not that we didn't think that it's a good idea that we should have sovereignty over that. We always thought that. But we didn't do it because even though we have the title for the land, and even though this is not annexation because this is the area that is our sovereignty is given by our historical rights and by that were recognized by the international community back in 1922 in the language of the mandate that said that the international community recognizes the historical connections between the Jewish people and Palestine, and based on that, it's calling for the reconstituting of the Jewish home in Palestine. That by the way, Article 5 of the mandate says that the mandatory will make sure that no part of this land will be ceded to any other party, and so on and so forth. So it's clear that we have a title for this piece of land, and nevertheless we were ready to look at it as a disputed land, and we were ready to do everything we can in order to reach an agreement with the Palestinians. But Chuck has to understand, the reason we didn't make any progress is the Palestinians don't want any such agreement, and he actually accepted it. And they would not accept forever any agreement that they do not control in it the Jordan Valley. Because of all the reasons I mentioned before, they need it in order to be able to keep threatening Tel Aviv. So it's because of that, this idea that we shall do all kinds of other arrangements in which we control the Jordan Valley is very dangerous. We need to be the plan understands it, and this is the only chance for peace. And talking about two-state solution, we are in favor of two states and for two peoples solution, in which the Palestinians accept that Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. And this is the plan. This is what the plan is talking about. So we are not here in a plan that says there is only going to be Israel and there's not going to be a Palestinian state. On the contrary, and we are ready to discuss, we are ready to negotiate based on this plan. So it's really self-defeating argument what Chuck said. That's the first time Israel is going to be ready to discuss a plan that's based on this idea. So it's but the problem with the previous attempt was that the Palestinians were holding the veto power. There was no way to move forward if you didn't succumb to all their demands. Here, for the first time, he should be jumping on this board and said, yes, let's go for that. I don't understand why he's against it. He should be very supportive of this. And I tell you what is the reason that Chuck does not support it. It's very simple. There are three kinds of oppositions to this plan and to this idea. One says, these are occupied Palestinian territories. Actually, what Chuck says, it is annexation. If it's annexation, it means that it belongs to somebody else. And it means that these are occupied Palestinian territories. If Chuck thinks that these are occupied Palestinian territories, okay, fine. That's one source of opposition. The other source of opposition is people say, wow, if we do that, all the sky are going to fall. It's terrible risk. Why should we take risk? We take risk for our security, for our peace. We take risk. We want peace. We know that we are not going to enjoy it ourselves, but maybe our children will. And we have to think of future generations. We take risks. And the third reason, and by the way, coming back to the first issue, one has to remember the organization that Chuck belongs. He says, yes, I agree that we need to control the Jordan Valley. But the organization he represents, the Commanders for the Security of Israel, as they call themselves, they, in their program, say that Israel will defend itself from the armistice, 49 armistice lines. That's our plan. That there's going to be separation and that we shall defend ourselves from non-defendable borders. So this is a very strange attitude. But now, the third reason that he opposes it, he says, well, but we have to keep trying the same thing that didn't work because this is a paradigm. Now, the entire idea here is a change of paradigm. This old paradigm didn't work. And the people that believed and spent their life, like Chuck and many others, spent their life in trying to promote this dead horse called the two-state solution in the old paradigm, are not ready to declare this dead horse a dead horse. And that's why when they presented with a different paradigm that has a chance to succeed, and they will bring Israel both security and peace, and will maintain its nature and identity as a Jewish and democratic state, because we have no intention, we are not the ultra-extreme right. We have no intention of taking, putting our sovereignty over Nablus and Ramallah. But there's a new paradigm how to reach there, and they want to stick to the old paradigm that doesn't work.
Thank you.
Let's give the...
Thank you very much. So I want to move on. I'm going to take this first to Chuck. I just want to give a counter narrative to the letter that I wrote. Everybody should be aware that the members of the House Republicans have written a letter with 119 signatories, which states that we assure you that we will stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel and oppose any effort to apply pressure in the context of opposition to the application of Israeli sovereignty over the Jordan Valley. Now, I want to get to the region. We've spoken about the Palestinian Arabs, the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas, and I want to talk about two issues before I open it up to audience questions, and I encourage the audience to continue to ask the questions. The first is with regard to regional countries with whom Israel has either long-standing, relatively positive ties or ties that are thawing somewhat. So the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, Chuck, has spoken about the possibility of an out-and-out conflict in the wake of the application of sovereignty to the Jordan Valley. And we also have an op-ed that was penned by the UAE ambassador, where he wrote that annexation, and I'm quoting, will certainly and immediately upend Israeli aspirations for improved security, economic and cultural ties with the Arab world and with UAE. Talk to us about what's real there. Talk to us about what should deter Israel in its determination to apply sovereignty, and talk to us about what's rhetoric, and then I'll come back to you, Cooper. And after that, I'm going to use the remainder of my time, which is limited, to discuss Iran. So I'm appealing to both of you to keep your answers short, sharp, succinct, and very elegant. Chuck, please.
Cooper wants a change in paradigm. Now, I certainly agree that the Palestinians are in bad need of a wake-up call, of a reality check. They have rejected every possible agreement for decades. And there is a question, and let's be open about this. Is there any deal that the Palestinians will accept, which means that they have to live in a state next to predominantly Jewish Israel? The question, there's no clear answer to that. There is no other paradigm other than separation which preserves Israel's character as a Jewish and democratic state. Sorry, there isn't. And wise statesmanship isn't about a crapshoot. It's not about a game of roulette. It's looking at the consequences of what one does. And I think I presented in some detail before, I won't restate it, that the consequences are significant to severe. That's not the way wise, forward-looking statesmen behave. And you correctly, Benjamin, pointed out that the king of Jordan has warned of massive conflict. We need Jordan. The peace with Jordan, the peace with Egypt are fundamental pillars of Israel's national security today. If the king tells us that this is for him catastrophic, and what he isn't saying, the subtext is you are threatening to undermine the monarchy, bring about the collapse of the Jordanian state. And by the way, that is, I think, the far right in Israel's endgame, is to bring about the collapse of the Jordanian monarchy. And then the Palestinian state is established in Jordan, not the West Bank. Now, I don't want to argue whether the West Bank is occupied territory. It's not occupied territory. You can certainly make a good case on both sides of it. It doesn't matter. We've been arguing this for 100 years. And I think, excuse me, Cooper, I think you are living here simply in the past. That's not the question. The question is going forward, how we wisely, taking risks, of course we take risks for security, how we wisely ensure our security for the long term. Now, there's this argument, you made it here today, you made it in an interesting article you wrote a couple of weeks ago that I read, that doing this annexation actually both promotes the peace process and ensures Israel's security. I'm sorry, this is simply, I think this is like newspeak from 1984. This is simply inverting reality. It's killing the possibility for a negotiated settlement. I'm all for new paradigms. This kills the ability to reach a settlement with the Palestinians, maybe forever. And in terms of security, the ramifications are negative across the board, and they help who? Iran and Hezbollah. Huge strategic success for the state of Israel.
Cooper, tell us, is there really a threat coming from Jordan? Does Jordan actually mean what Chuck said it means, which is that it's being destabilized by way of Israel's actions? And also, do you think that given the improving ties that Israel has with various countries in the region, those countries will indeed withdraw from the states of Israel once again in the event that Israel applies sovereignty? What's the truth and what's the rhetoric?
Well, there's some amount of truth in it, and there's a lot of rhetoric. And, because in the end of the day, all our pragmatic Arab neighbors understand the value of the relations with Israel. And even if they don't agree with this move that we plan to carry out, they, in the long strategic assessment, will remain friends of Israel. They don't have anybody else to replace the Israeli contribution to their stability and to their security. Not even the United States in a way, because they know that today they can rely on the United States. Tomorrow, the United States may have a different approach. And they suffered under Obama. So it's, they know Israel is always a friend you can rely on. And Israel is the one who's taking Iran heads on. And Israel is never going to cooperate with the Muslim Brotherhood. And so it's a friend that you can trust. And because of that, even though they now maybe have to say all kinds of things because this is what Arabs say in such situations, this will disappear and dissipate after a while. It's Jordan will take some steps, but it's not going to abrogate the peace agreement. Even Chuck said it won't, so I can rely on him. Egypt is extremely silent. Saudi Arabia is speaking about using the pipeline from Eilat to Ashkelon to move its oil. All of them have, we cannot speak too much about it, but all of them have very strong security cooperation with Israel. It's, I don't think that this is going to disappear just because we moved on to something that is for them less important. One has to follow the social networks to see where the people from the Gulf stand on this issue. They are totally disappointed with everything that happens with the Palestinians. Even the Palestinians themselves, by the way. They are going to react, in my mind, but it's not the kind. We saw it also with the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem and so on and so forth. Even them, they understand that something is broken in the Palestinian Authority. Now, Chuck suggests that just because the Jordanians don't like it, and beyond us, between us, I can tell you, the Jordanians do like it. They say they don't like it because they have to say that they don't like it because more than 50% of the population is Palestinian. But they like it very much because the alternative is that the Palestinians will be there. This is the real nightmare that the Jordanians have.
Thank you.
So we have just one.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move on just because time's very short. Cooper, forgive me for interrupting you. I want to deal with the issue of Iran. And Cooper, I'm going to come to you first on this, and then I'll ask Chuck for rebuttal, and then we'll get to the audience questions, as many as we're able to take. The issue of Iran, there are those who say that Israel absolutely should not be moving to apply sovereignty in the Jordan Valley because it needs to expand and focus and deploy all of its political capital, specifically with the United States of America, towards the countering of that malign country state and its nuclear program. Then there is another side which says you must apply sovereignty and affix Israel's eastern boundary, specifically in order to prevent the land bridge and the possible advancement of Iran in the future. So these are just two of the arguments. Chuck, please pass those out if you would, and tell us which you find more compelling, and explain the role of applying sovereignty in the context of Israel locking arms with the United States of America in order to counter Iran. Cooper, sorry, please. If you could go first, Cooper, I'll take you first, and then I'll come back to that.
So, well, the Iran threat is the most important threat that we have to deal with, and it's not going to stay only in the north, in Syria and Lebanon, and coming with long-range missiles from Iran, and the nuclear project. The Iranians also would like very much to have an influence in Jordan and along our border, and they're doing their best. And we have all kinds of people who are trained by the Iranians who are trying to infiltrate from Jordan, and so on and so forth. They are all over the place. And but the kind of effort we need to exert in the context of Iran is totally different than what we have to do here with the Palestinians. And we keep dealing with the Iranians. The operations like we did in Tehran, bringing the archives, is not going to be affected by the application of the sovereignty in the Jordan Valley. And our operations in Syria and elsewhere continue, and they demand a different kind of capabilities. Moreover, the more we cooperate with the American administration, the more effective are we going to be in fighting Iran, because in the end of the day, it's us and the US administration fighting Iran in the international arena. And it's us and the American administration trying to change the paradigm in the context of the Palestinian context. So it's we are with them. The more we cooperate, and together, by the way, with the pragmatic Arabs. That's, we cannot rely on Europe. They do not do anything regarding Iran, unfortunately. We definitely cannot rely on Russia and China. We have to rely on we unfortunately, we can't even rely on the Democrats in the United States on this issue. They say that they want to go back to the JCPOA, which leads to, within less than 10 years, to having an arsenal of nuclear weapons in the hands of Iran. So it's, we have to cooperate with the current administration and hope that the United States in the future, whoever wins, will also cooperate in the battle against the Iranian ambitions in the Middle East. And in this context, applying the Israeli sovereignty in the Jordan Valley is good in order to be able to face Iranian threats that may emerge from this direction as well in the future.
Thank you, Cooper. Chuck, come back on that if you would, please, on the subject of Iran.
Let's assume for argument's sake that annexation is the right thing to do from Israel's point of view, just in terms of the Palestinian West Bank issue. For argument's sake. One thing that Cooper and I certainly agree on is that the number one threat that the state of Israel today faces is Iran, especially a nuclear Iran, their growing presence in Syria, the truly mammoth Hezbollah rocket arsenal. When I say Hezbollah, that's essentially Iran. Iran is our number one, by far, overriding objective. That's what we should be focused on like a laser. Anything that gets in the way of that, that detracts attention from that, we shouldn't be doing. Especially something which, even if you believe that it's right in principle, why now? What does this have to be done? Why does this have to be done today? First of all, I said before, it deflects attention from the nuclear issue, from everything else the Iranian and Hezbollah are doing. Second of all, maybe Cooper is right. I think he's downplaying it. Maybe he's right that the consequences won't be quite as significant with the Gulf states, with Jordan, etc. Why do we have to risk it at all? We had a good thing going with them. What purpose, what objective does this serve now? We need Europe for the Iranian issue. We are alienating them even more. We're focusing their attention on this instead of on Iran. We're giving all of our many opponents in Europe justification for their position. Now, maybe people on the right today, supporters of annexation, do not like the Democratic Party. That's not what this is about, people. This is the United States of America. Sometimes there are Democratic administrations, sometimes there are Republican ones. There's one thing that I'm even willing to stake my life on, not too many issues like that. Sooner or later, whether it's this November, 4 years from now, 8 years from now, there's going to be a Democratic administration. The fury on the Democratic side it's actually horrifying. And by the way, 80%, give or take, of the Jewish community votes Democratic. We are reaching a rupture with the Jewish community, which is going to be hard to repair. It's going to be hard to repair the rupture with the Democratic side. If we go ahead with annexation now, we make it really hard to repair when we need them for Iran.
Thank you, Jack. I very much appreciate it. And I'm going to ask a couple of questions from our audience. And I can tell you there are a number of questions. Some of them are repeats. And I'm going to appeal to both of our panelists to answer these very succinctly, because I want to give you time to give your wrap-up argument and to take the vote. So the first question comes from Robert. Robert says, would it not be better to wait until the American election in order to apply sovereignty, in order to avoid energizing the American Jewish left and those Democrats that are opposed to Zionism? So, Cooper, I'd like you to answer that question, please. If you would, you go first.
Well, I don't think we should wait, because if we wait, we might not have this golden opportunity. This golden opportunity may disappear if we wait. And, there's a good chance that Biden will win, and then we shall not have the golden opportunity. And if this is important, if we let it disappear, then we shall not have this paradigm, this new paradigm. We shall go back to the old paradigm, and maybe worse than that. Because in the end of the day, this the Democratic Party, where Biden was the vice president, promoted 2-3-3-4. They believe in something totally different. They believe that the Western Wall in Jerusalem is occupied Palestinian territory. So let's make sure that this new paradigm is getting a chance, and it's going to be difficult even for democratic administration to tell Israel to go back and move like that. And everybody will have to give this paradigm a chance. And I think this is the only paradigm that can succeed. So let's start with this paradigm. Now, of course, if there is going to be an different American administration, we shall encounter a new situation where we are actually confrontational, because if I understand what the Democrats, and I agree with Chuck, and the direction in which the Democratic Party is going. I feel, and this is just one last word, I felt a little bit frustrated with the fact that the Democrats had an opinion about this issue before they were actually speaking with Israel, to listen to find out what Israel wants to do exactly, and what is the context in which it's doing it. It is, for example, by saying in this letter that you mentioned, this is going to have a negative impact on the ability to reach a two-state solution, is just opposite to what we're saying.
Chuck, question for you from the opposite position to the one you hold, I believe, comes from Pamela. She says that Israel reversed what was once she termed the next Gaza, and look what happened. It vacated unilaterally from southern Lebanon, and look what happened. And then she asked, why is declaring sovereignty over historic Israel with 500,000 Jewish inhabitants there considered antagonistic? How many more decades is Israel supposed to wait for the Palestinians to declare that they have lost and to accept a Jewish state? I think she's really driving at the issue of the Palestinian veto, which has come up several times during this conversation. And she asks you for a yes or no. Would you prefer continued withdrawals given the lessons learned from Gaza?
I'm not going to go and debate every issue in the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict, and I'm not going to give yes or no answers to questions that clearly reflect a biased or a position. This isn't a golden opportunity. It's an opportunity, as I said before, which is driven largely by domestic politics in Israel. An opportunity which may dissipate in 3 months because a different president may or may not be elected isn't a golden opportunity. It's an attempt to go and quickly steal something while you can. That's not the way you maintain a long-term relationship with another state, especially a global superpower. I agree with Cooper. There is a need for change. You want to call it a new paradigm, call it whatever you wish. The Trump plan isn't a new paradigm. It is a totally unrealistic plan. It does, by the way, have a few good points in it. I mean, it would hardly imagine that somebody could sit, it's not the president, but his advisors, they could sit for a couple of years preparing a plan. There'd be nothing good in it. Of course, there are some good points in it. One Cooper mentioned earlier, for example, yes, the Palestinians finally have to recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state in the Mideast. The fact that it says no resolution of the refugee issue in Israel, that's good. There are other good points. It isn't a vaguely realistic plan. And if we select the part of the plan that we want to implement, annexation, but we don't also accept openly, the prime minister told the settlers in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, widely reported, he said, well, we're just going to accept the annexation part. We're not going to do the two-state part. If we want to come out and say, oh, wait a second, yes, we fully embrace two states, and not unilaterally, but coordinated, not just with the United States, we'll coordinate this with the Palestinians, and in exchange for some sort of very limited annexation, we want something in exchange from them. Okay, if this is part of really moving the peace process forward, but not what is a totally unilateral move, which undermines security and prevents the ability to reach peace.
Thank you. Last question from the audience before you make your final comments. If sovereignty were to be extended, what would be the citizenship status of those Palestinian Arabs currently living within that region? And how does the answer to that question impact upon or inform your position on the issue? I think this is a question that really is often skirted around answering, and I'd like you, Chuck, first of all, to say how you envision that.
We don't know what territory we're talking about. A lot of people think that Area C is essentially emptied of Palestinians. It's not. The real number, not the official number, is somewhere between 200 and 300,000 people. Look, I want to do two things. I want to ensure Israeli security, because without security, there's nothing. And I want to ensure our long-term character as a predominantly Jewish and democratic state. And I think that moves such as this simply undermine that. It's a further step in this ongoing process of annexation, which inexorably, if we continue with this, it leads to the demise of a Jewish democratic Israel.
Cooper, a quick answer to that question, if you would.
Yeah, well, first of all, the number of Palestinians that are going to be in this area that is going to be under Israeli sovereignty is going to be extremely limited, because only half of Area C is going to be under this, even in the whatever result is going to be to these deliberations now, half of Area C. And this is the half that includes the settlements and the Jordan Valley. Jordan Valley, there are about 5,000 Palestinians living there, and they are not going to be under this area of sovereignty, Israeli sovereignty. They are going to be in some sort of an enclave. And the rest of the Palestinians living in Area C are in those, most of them are in the Area C that is still kept for the Palestinians to come. Now, I agree with Chuck that if the Palestinians would have come to the table right now, there will not be a need to do a move like that. But the Palestinians are not coming. The Palestinians didn't even want to see the plan. So it's, let's be realistic. They don't come because they believe that in the end of the day, there's going to be some new administration in the United States. Something is going to save them. Deus ex machina. Something is going to happen. It's, we have to tell them that nothing is going to happen. You have to sit to the table. Come to the table. Let's discuss. We are not against discussion. We are ready. It's not going to happen if you are not saying that we are ready to discuss it according to the peace plan presented by President Trump. That is a precondition. So don't worry, Chuck. We are moving towards an agreement, and a good agreement that will keep Israel Jewish and democratic, and will keep its security, and will bring peace. It's going to take time because it's hard for the Palestinians to accept it. They need something really big to make them.
I'm going to now, that concludes the back and forth and the debate. I want to give each of you just 2 minutes to summarize your positions. And I'm going to start with the opposition to the motion. Chuck, you have 2 minutes, please, if you would, in opposition to the motion.
Again, I agree with Cooper. We have to find a way to get the Palestinians to come to the table. By the way, in recent decades, the last years, on and off for the last couple of decades, it's not just they who have not really wanted to come to the table. Not all Israeli governments have wanted to come to the table. But it is certainly true that we put truly dramatic proposals on the table and they rejected them. And I say again what I said before, I can't tell you for sure that I am convinced that the Palestinians are willing to accept any deal that means living next to predominantly Jewish Israel. We have to preserve the possibility to do that for the future, because if we want to maintain our Jewish and democratic character, ultimately we have to separate. Where exactly you draw the line is to be negotiated, and we can differ where exactly it should be. But fundamentally, separation, you know as well as I do, Yossi, we have no choice. Again, my opposition is not to annexation, it is to unilateral annexation. It is to taking measures which prevent the ability to reach a two-state solution. It is part of a process of creeping annexation. Yeah, I participated in these same arguments or debates back in the 80s, and I remember people telling me at the time, well, a few settlements is good because the Palestinians will be afraid that they'll lose their territory, and so they'll come back to the table. It failed then, it failed now. That's not the way they seem to operate. They do exactly the opposite. If you want to make the case that the Palestinians may be the most dysfunctional people around, I think that may be the case. What can you do? They happen to be our neighbors. Preserve conditions for a two-state solution if and when they arise.
Thank you very much, Chuck. And Cooper, you have 2 minutes to summarize, please.
Yeah, well, we don't have a chance for two-state solution, so we can't preserve it. We have to create a chance for two-state solution. We have to create it. And because of that, we have to move to a new paradigm, because the new old paradigm did not preserve a chance. There was no chance. We failed and failed again because of the Palestinian narrative. Here comes a plan, a move that will deliver a message, convey a message to the Palestinians that there is a price for sticking to their old narrative. And we should allow that to happen. It's going to be with a price. We are ready to pay it. We should be ready to pay it. But it's not going to be a devastating price. It's a certain price that we can withstand, and we shall move forward. And we are not doing it because, by the way, I don't think we're doing it for political reasons. We do it because we really want better life for everybody living in Israel, and especially for Israel itself, but also for our neighbors. We want better lives for everybody, and we can make it happen through this move.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, our guests, it's now time for you to cast your votes. You've heard a vigorous and rigorous discussion and debate led by two individuals who have given the very best of themselves and their talents in the defense of the state of Israel. And at this stage, I'm going to call in our colleague Thomas. He will talk you through how to cast your post-debate vote. Thomas, I'd like you to instruct us, please, if you would.
All right, so if everyone would like to go back to menti.com, MENTI.com, and use the code 476579, and you can cast your vote on whether Israel must apply sovereignty over the Jordan Valley. The options are oppose the motion, commend, and abstain. Before the debate started, 57% commended the motion, 30% opposed it, and 13% abstained. Once again, you can go to menti.com, MENTI.com, and use the code 476579, and you can vote on whether Israel must apply sovereignty over the Jordan Valley. Right now, it looks like 48%. We've got about a tie between commend and opposed. To start, it was at 57-30. So we'll let it trickle in now.
And I want to just encourage everybody who's voting, please vote in accordance with who presented the more compelling argument. Please apply the best of your intellectual honesty to what you've heard and the decision that you make based upon that. We're not here to gauge the opinions of our gracious listeners. We are here to gauge the opinions of our gracious listeners and the question of who made the more compelling argument. So we'll leave that. We'll let these votes come in for just a couple more minutes. And thank you for your patience. Thomas, how are we progressing with collecting votes?
I believe we have collected everyone who has voted previously. So
I'm getting
right now, I mean,
the process is a little bit jammed. So let's just give it one more minute while people wait and apply their patience.
Yep. Right now, it looks like 50% commend and 45% opposed. So we'll give it another minute to collect more votes. To start, it was at 57% who commended, 30% opposed, and 13% abstained. Yep, and it appears that we have collected about the same amount of votes as previously.
Excellent. So Thomas, can you please give us the decision on the movement, and can you please express to us who is the winner of this debate based on the principle that whomever has moved the needle the most is declared our winner?
Yes, so to start the debate, 30% opposed, and now to end the debate, 44% opposed the motion for Israel to apply sovereignty over the Jordan Valley. So it would appear that oppose the motion has actually won the debate by moving the needle by 14 percentage points. Commend the vote, it started at 57%. So it has dropped now down to 51%. So that needle has been moved by 6%. And 13% abstained in the beginning, and 5% have abstained now, so that moved by 8% people, and we're now able to make their decision.
Well, thank you very much. So it looks like, Chuck Freilich, you have carried the day. You have won the motion, and I want to thank you, and I also want to thank Cooper for participating in this debate. It's so very important, and I want to thank our audience, because the reality of the matter is that what they have been privy to, what all of you have been privy to, is Israelis debating the future of the state of Israel in accordance with what they see in its own best interest. And that's what the MirYam Institute is about. It's about keeping Israel's future in Israel's hands. I also want to commend the audience for applying all of the intellectual honesty that we treasure here at the MirYam Institute. And I want to thank each of you for giving of your time and your attention. I'd like to invite, maybe Cooper, you want to give an elbow quickly to Chuck, and Chuck an elbow over to Cooper, and in that way we have a peaceful and safe departure. And I want to express my appreciation, please, to my colleague Rosita Panini at the MirYam Institute, to Alan Langer, and also to our partners, jbstv.org and theallgemeiner.com. I've certainly learned a great deal from our debaters today. I look forward to bringing about the next debate, which we'll be announcing in the coming weeks. Please visit the website of the MirYam Institute, themiryaminstitute.org. Look at the diversity of views that we're presenting from the State of Israel. You can agree, you can disagree, but we hope that wherever you are politically and wherever you are physically, you can engage with Israel via the MirYam Institute, whether it's through our written articles, our podcasts, our filmed events, or our postcasts or live debates and events. We want you there. Engage through us. Thank you so very much to all of you for your time, and thank you for having such a reasoned and such a logical and such a passionate but focused discussion on so important an issue. That concludes this debate.